Troy Nickerson, welcome to the podcast.
Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, I'm excited, man. I remember coming up in the ranks, when I was wrestling, you were a couple years ahead and just lighting the world on fire. And now you're leading a program. So I'm so glad to have you on. And you spent time at Cornell, and I love those guys. So we'll have some fun today. I wanted to start though with the moment you got the call to join Northern Colorado. How did it even get on your radar?
It wasn't, and it's funny. I mean, I joke about this, when people ask me, how'd you end up out there and whatnot. I mean, I obviously, I felt like I was ready to be a head coach, and I was looking for the right opportunity. And I saw this open up, and immediately my mind just went to, didn't even know they were Division I. Like, I'm not interested. And the first phone call I got from our athletic director here, still our athletic director, asking me, hey, would you be interested in, being our next wrestling coach? I told him no. And, conversation kind of, it ended pretty abruptly. But then I got a call about 20 minutes later from Mike Moyer at the Coach Association. And he said, Troy, just hear me out. It's not that bad. And, I talked to Mike and ended up getting back on the phone with our AD here. And, they explained some things to me about the program, which I was naive to at the time and didn't really know. And, very quickly I realized, hey, actually we can turn this into a winning program. And, here I am 8 years later. Right. So it's been a fun ride so far.
I love that initially you said no, you went back to him. What was it about was it like the community? Was it the campus? What were some of the hooks for you?
The biggest thing was we had at the time, it was about a $5.5 million endowment for wrestling, so I knew the financial support was here. The people within the university were here. One of our former presidents, is a huge supporter of wrestling. The current president, when I got hired, her husband was a high school college wrestler. So there was a lot of wrestling people here in the area, which again, in order to have success, I mean, it doesn't take one person, it takes an army, right? And to be able to have all those people on your side, as well as a pretty supportive alumni base, it was very encouraging, and I spent some time out at the Olympic Training Center when I was still competing for a quick minute. And during my free time, I got to spend time, coaching some of these youth programs. And you had, I remember doing individuals with Ryan Deacon and Colton Schultz when they were 6 years old, right? 8 years
Mm-hmm.
old. And so I knew, and you could tell at a very early age that these kids were going to be pretty special, right? So I knew the talent was here in Colorado, and being the only show in town, being the only public Division I institution in the state, I mean, there was just a lot of benefits and advantages that we had going for it. And there was only one direction to go too, just up, right? I mean, we were pretty bad. So it was a fun challenge for me that I looked forward to. And really, ultimately, I was looking for something like that because as an athlete, I mean, we took a lot of pride in turning Cornell kind of into the monster it is today. And, I felt like I could sell that vision because I did it myself, right? And that's what we've been up to, right? Just trying to get the best kids in here to help us take that next step.
And I noticed that you've grown the endowment by, $2.5 million, maybe even more. So how much of your time is focused on, I call it the Rob Cole position, where he's doing the fundraising, he's doing everything, and versus being in the room, like running the practices?
A lot, obviously I was mentored under Rob, so I've really taken, a lot of his traits with me. That's the part of the job I enjoy, friend building people that want to support the program. So I'm fully invested into, the fundraising piece and then the recruitment piece, right? I think those are the two ways that we can grow this program the fastest. I'm very fortunate that I have excellent assistant coaches, and I can really trust them to the day-to-day and worrying about, making sure the kids have everything they need. I'm still in the room. I mean, I'm only 35. I'll get on the mat and beat these guys up if I have to. Just the other day in preseason here, I went and ran with them, during one of our individual runs. And, I probably beat too many guys, as I told them afterwards. But, I enjoy all aspects of the job, but in order to for us to reach our goals, it's really that fundraising piece and the recruitment piece, which are going to have the most gain.
Yeah. I mean, plus, us being, like I said, in our 30s, being, quality of life and living in a cool spot is a lot. Like Colorado is an amazing place to live. I mean, there's out of all the D1 places to live, of D1 programs, you definitely have something going for you there.
It could be worse. It could be a lot worse. I mean, I always joke where, I mean, I grew up in Binghamton, New York, and didn't know any better. I mean, the place was miserable, in a lot of ways. I later found out it was like the 8th cloudiest city in America. Like, I didn't know any better, right? I grew up there, and I went just 45 minutes up the road to Ithaca, and I'm like, wow, it's sunny here. And then I went to Iowa State and coached there for a while. I'm like, wow, it's sunny here. And now I'm in Colorado. We get 300 days of sun. Like, oh, okay, I get it now. Yeah. Right. So we are very spoiled here. The weather's great. There's so much to do. I wish I could say I've taken advantage of living in Colorado. I haven't. My wife has. I don't have the time, but at the same time, I enjoy what I do on a day-to-day basis, and it's fun for me.
Do you have a Subaru or a Patagonia?
I don't have either. I may have a Patagonia. My wife probably bought me one. I do not own a Subaru though. My new assistant coach that I just hired though, Justin Oliver, he drives a Subaru, so he was kind of built to be in Colorado.
Fits right in. Right? Fits right in. I grew up in the Quad Cities, Western Illinois, and our claim to fame is that we're on Interstate 80. And like every time you would see a car with Colorado plates, it was a Subaru. And then I lived in California, come to find out the joke goes there too. So I had to ask. And, you mentioned you grew up in Binghamton, went to Cornell, and now we're talking about one of the most legendary high school careers of all time, back when you were in high school, man. So I had read that a big turning point for you was 7th grade. You almost made it to the state tournament. Talk to us about that and how that lit a fire for you.
Yeah, it was one of those, I started wrestling at 5 years old. I was always, for the most part, pretty good. I was never the best, but I had plenty of success. And, again, right about that middle school age, right, is when I finally started taking that ownership in it, right? I mean, I wanted to go to practice. It wasn't my dad just saying, hey, we're going to practice tonight, right? So there was a lot of, those changes happening within my life. And, I was putting in a decent amount of effort that 7th grade year. And, I had never not made it to at least the end, right? The end goal, which, at that point was the state tournament. And it hurt, right? I remember losing that match, and I probably wasn't even supposed to win that match, but it really hurt, So that summer, I really just took it upon myself to, really try to make those gains. And it paid off for me in the long run.
So what does that look like? Is that you just doing a lot of freestyle, or is it running and lifting? What were some of the stuff you were doing that year?
It was everything. I think I competed a lot that summer. I think I, really took a vested interest in making sure I was getting better. But it was a lot of getting bigger as well. My 7th grade year, I was wrestling at 96 pounds was the weight class. And, I was weighing probably 85. Soaking wet. I was tiny. I mean, I was drinking water before I stepped on the scale just so I could weigh the minimum, things like that. So it was, just growing into the weight class a little bit. And, by my 8th grade year, I was finally, at least a full 96 pounds, which made it a little easier. But it was just that maturity factor of taking ownership in something and really seeing it through from start to finish.
And one of the clubs I heard you wrestled for during this time was the Shamrock Club. And, Scott Green, who's now at Army, was a big part of that. If not, I'm not too familiar with that. I just know he was the coach. Was he the main guy who started it and ran it?
Yeah, that was Scotty's club, and we had an excellent freestyle and Greco program. I mean, it was just a great situation where you had the best kids in Section 4, which was our area in upstate New York, that during the summertime we got together and we all beat the heck out of each other, right? And I mean, we just had some fantastic teams, some club duel teams, really before the club duel stuff was even a thing, right? Now it's everywhere. But it was just that, wrestle the best to be the best, it's kind of survival of the fittest in a sense. So we've had so many, All Americans, national champions come through that room. I mean, it's incredible. And, again, I think Scotty he's an excellent coach, and he just did a great job of cultivating relationships and getting the right people what they needed. You know, he wasn't one of those coaches that really had an ego. It was just about what could he do for the kids and for the sport and for the area. And, you know, it benefited all of us.
And didn't you guys have like 7 or 8 Greco champs one year from that club alone at Fargo?
I don't think it was from the club, but I know New York did. I can't remember what year it was, but one year we in Greco, like you said, we just totally dominated as a state. And you know, there was, I think it was probably mainly Shamrock guys. There was probably a couple of Atwood guys in there. But you know, it was just a great time to be part of New York wrestling, right? And you know, that success breeds success. And I was even looking through some old stuff the other day. My wife's got me cleaning out the closets, right? And you know, I think it was my senior year in high school, at senior nationals, New York had an incredible showing, right? So I was very fortunate to grow up in an era where wrestling was very strong there.
Yeah. Is New York 1 division or 2 divisions for the state tournament?
So now it's 2 divisions. It was 1 division when I was coming through. It kind of changed. I think it was my senior year.
And did you guys wear the singlet of the district in the state finals instead of your high school singlet?
We used to. I don't think they do it anymore or as much. But yeah, I mean, New York was a very tough state to win. You know, it was a tough state just to get to the state tournament. You qualified through your section, and back in the day, you had to win your section just to get to the state tournament. You know, there was 11 sections. You had the Catholic schools and the private schools. So there was 13 guys at the state tournament. I mean, I remember multiple times the guy that lost in the section finals was probably the second best guy in the state, and he didn't even get to go. You know, I know now they've changed it, right? With the 2 divisions, they allow wild cards and things like that, which I think is good for the sport. But back in the day, I mean, that was one heck of a tough state tournament.
So all 5 years you won it 1 division.
My senior year was 2 divisions.
2 divisions. Wow.
Yep.
And for folks listening, I've already mentioned this in the intro, but first 5-time state champ in New York history. When did you realize that was a goal that you wanted to pursue?
It really wasn't, you know. I mean, I remember growing up and watching Jesse Jansen win his 4th title, be the first one ever to do it. I always, thought, hey, yeah, that would be cool, right? That would be great to be able to do that. Winning as an 8th grader, obviously it put it in my head, but it was never really something that, I was really striving for, right? It was always just more getting better and getting the most out of my ability. I remember my first couple of years of high school, there was serious thought about going to Blair Academy. I mean, so much thought as I remember, I mean, we had the paper signed at one point, so it was, that was a hard decision, but it was ultimately what was best for me and what was best. I obviously was very close to my family. That was probably the one thing that kept me back. But we created an environment where I was still having great training partners and people that around me that supported me. And what I was ultimately trying to do was getting to the next level.
So what grade were you looking at going to Blair?
Gosh, it was probably my 9th grade year, 10th grade year, and 11th grade year, right? It was probably all 3. Probably at the time, Jeff Buxton probably hated me at some point. We'd have the conversation every year and it just never happened. But, it was, again, Blair was 2 hours away. It was a place that probably throughout the season, I was down there once a week, just in their room training, just getting, a different feel, a different environment. Again, they were all, even though I kept telling them no, ultimately they're great. Let me come down and train with those guys. But, it was, that was a huge part of my success growing up as well. Just being able to train with those guys all the time.
When I was going to ask you, everything you read about you is that incredible discipline and very consistent, but also the technique just off the chart. So did you learn a lot of the technique just from your father, your high school coaches, or is there anyone who was like a real impact on the technical aspect of it for you?
I can't really say that there was one person that technically, like, hey, they really took me to that next level. But my father, he grew up dirt poor. I mean, moved 27 times during his childhood. Never really had the opportunity to wrestle. Loved the sport, just never had a chance to do it, right? And I was very fortunate that he retired at a very young age when I was just in diapers still, and having him there and recognizing that, hey, he wasn't an expert in it, but he was going to make it a goal of his to put me around the best that he could find. And so he took me all up and down the East Coast, all throughout the country a few times a year, just to try to find the best people to surround me around that could help me reach my goals. And that was ultimately, the best thing for me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's clear that you were, super advanced. I mean, the 1 year at Fargo, you were double OW, which is like, you pinch yourself when you're reading some of this shit. You're like, what the heck? And I love the story, though, how the previous year, Paul Donahoe was first team All American on the A6 board, and you had beaten him head to head. And I don't know if A6 didn't know that or what their excuse was, but you kind of had a chip on your shoulder going into Fargo that next year. Is that a story you remember?
I briefly, yeah. I didn't remember it was Paul that was ahead of me at the time, but I remember feeling snubbed 1 year, and it is what it is, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Did it provide probably a little extra motivation? Sure. But I mean, it certainly wasn't something I was thinking about going into those Fargos. I mean, it was really just making sure that I was at my best. And I think, again, with New York wrestling at that time, we had a great training camp. I really believe I was well prepared, and it was just that was my time.
Yeah, man. I mean, I watched the interview you did with Earl where it was like, you never lost a Greco match ever.
Ever to this day, never will either.
Undefeated, baby. Man, that's crazy. And so you must have been recruited by every school in the country. How did who recruited you besides Cornell before we get to that piece?
Almost every school in the country.
Yeah.
Almost every school. And again, that was back before cell phones and everything. So, I mean, I was very fortunate in a lot of ways because, my parents got to screen a lot of those calls, right? Otherwise, I can not imagine some of the pressure that these kids are under today, right? I feel bad for them in a little ways.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't know what I wanted. The academics was very important to me at the time. I was pretty dead set on, becoming a physician at some point later down the road. But I didn't know what I wanted. I looked at everything from, Harvard to West Virginia. And, ultimately at the end of the day, Cornell was never, in my mind, it was really never considered in a sense, but it was one of those where it was almost too close to home and you just didn't think about it. Right. I trained up there a lot, my, junior and senior year of high school. Another one of those training opportunities that my father had helped set up. Right. But ultimately, I remember specifically because I committed late. It was at I think it was at the Southern Scuffle is where it was. And, Minnesota was in the picture at the time. And, I was very heavily considering going to Minnesota. Schlater had committed, a bunch of other guys had committed. We really had a stacked class that was going there, and they were recruiting me heavily. And I remember, I think Cornell beat Minnesota or finished ahead of them at the Scuffle that year. And it was one of those things where I just wasn't even thinking of it. It was like, wow, they're not bad, right? At the time, Minnesota was pretty good. So, it was that aha moment for me where it was like, I can stay close to home, I can get the great degree, and I can win at wrestling right here at home. Why would I go anywhere else? And ultimately, it was the choice I made. And for me, it was the best decision I ever made.
Yeah, I mean, and it's funny hearing you say this because this is pre-Cornell's dominance, and they had Travis Lee, and definitely the program was on the rise, from the 90s where it was Spates into Rob Cole and, Dr. David Hurst, won, but really wasn't like the hammer of a program that it was. And you were one of the first, big recruits that they brought in. And, your senior year, you guys ended up taking second in the country, which was unheard of for Cornell before that. But once you get on campus, were the academics a shock to you? Because you were a solid student in high school, but what was that experience like?
I was a decent student in high school. I was probably smart enough where I didn't really have to put in the time in high school. But once I got to college, it was a shock. I had to put in the time, so I struggled early on. I think, just the entire experience of, getting into the college wrestling, it was a shock to me a little bit, but I was very fortunate to have some great upperclassmen leadership, guys like Mike Mormile and Joe Mazurko, who were just fantastic leaders, and just kind of, I remember first day walking in the room and, like Mormile grabbing me and saying, "Hey, you're lifting with me," and just taking me under their wing and, showing me the way a little bit. And that was very instrumental in, having that success right out of the gate. And, and then obviously my coaches, right, like Steve Garland. I mean, we probably, I'd like to say I beat him up a little bit back then, but it probably didn't happen. It was more him kicking my butt every day. But I mean, it was just so huge in being able to get me ready to be in the finals as a freshman, right? I mean, just all those little things just really impacted it.
Yeah, Steve's awesome. We've had him on the podcast. Energy through the roof.
Oh yeah,
he's a big hype guy, and him and Rob together would have been an interesting team. And so your freshman year is the only year you get through unscathed from the injury bug, make it all the way to the NCAA finals. So by all accounts, one of the best freshman years you could have. What happened in your sophomore year with the back injury? When did that arise?
The back thing was something that bothered me a little bit in high school. But it was really something that I could just manage. And honestly, I was just so much better than everybody in high school that I could make it through it. Right. I figured it out, but I've got a chronic issue with a rib dislocating from the back of my spine, and when that happens, if you ever had it happen, I mean, it like paralyzes you. You can't walk. And there was one rib that was really bothering me that season. And, by the time I got to the national tournament, I was fine. Right. But the one thing it really impacted was my training, and it impacted my conditioning. And, I remember going into that national tournament, and I believe it was Donahoe that I wrestled in the semifinals there. And I think we went into overtime. I was hurt. I was dying, right, a little bit. So I think that really impacted me. And, it is what it is, right? I mean, this college wrestling stuff is a grind. Very few times you're going to go through 100% healthy, and you just got to be ready for the moment, and just anything can happen.
Yeah, I mean, and when you look at the fact that you didn't redshirt, so freshman year you get through second in the country, your sophomore year, despite the injury, still take a third. That's a quick 2 years though. And, for you, the expectations must have been as high as ever, not even from the outside world, but for yourself. And so when you tore your labrum your junior year, and you're out for like the next basically 18 months, does any self-doubt start to creep in if this thing's ever going to happen for you? Or like, where were you at mentally during that rehab?
No, I think I was in a pretty good spot, really. I mean, the shoulder injury was kind of funny because, I mean, I had the back stuff, I had little stuff, right, throughout my entire career, but nothing major. And that summer in between that sophomore and junior season, I didn't really know anything about, making these world teams and whatnot. And, it was one of those spur of the moment things like, hey, let's go to the last chance qualifier. Let's try to make a world team, right? I mean, whatever. I win the last chance qualifier. I go to the world team trials at 60 kilo, I believe it was, which again, I had no business being at 60 kilo. I should have been down at 55 at that time. And, I wrestled through the tournament. Zach Roberson beats me up. I get in the backside, and I think it was, it was one of the Keith brothers. I can't remember which ones I wrestled in that tournament, but during that match, I felt my shoulder pop, and I ended up losing that match, and didn't really think much of it, right? Because I had never really had a serious injury. So felt my shoulder pop. It was sore for a couple of weeks, but I took time off. Didn't really bother me. Well, I got back in the fall, training for the fall season. And I remember one day in practice, I'm pretty sure I was wrestling around with Frankie Pirelli, and I felt it pop again. Like, that's not good, right? And we had it looked at, and sure enough, I had that tear, and ended up having to go through surgery and taking that year off. So it wasn't something that was really a hey, can you ever make this happen? It was just go through the motions and get back, But unfortunately, with those shoulder injuries, they take time, and I don't know that I took enough time to really make sure I was 100%. And then, again, it was kind of just chronic after that, right? The rest of my career.
And did you even go to the Nationals in 08, or did you stay back?
I did go. Yep. Me and a couple of buddies, we drove out, we went there, watched it. It sucked, right? Watching it. And I think maybe Angel won that year, I want to say. So I mean, it hurt, but nothing changed, right? It was the same goal. Just got to get ready for next year. It wasn't my time. We'll be ready to go next year.
And that summer, the great Henry Cejudo wins his gold medal. And he's someone who I got to imagine your whole life growing up, you guys are maybe a weight class apart. Did you ever wrestle him growing up or?
We never wrestled. Yeah, never wrestled. He was always the weight class below me. All throughout the years, we never hit though. I mean, just, craziest thing, we've trained together, right? Multiple times, but never competed against each other.
But I got to imagine, saw each other at Fargo a bunch and we're kind of at all those tournaments, going through it at the same time. And so when he wins the gold medal, did that have any impact on you at all?
For sure. I mean, I think it does anytime, right? When you see somebody that you feel like, you're right there with, or, could have beat or whatever, it definitely makes an impact. I mean, I remember getting up at, whatever time it was, 2, 4 o'clock in the morning, watching his gold medal match and, in 08. And yeah, it's like, man, I should be there. Right. So, I mean, I might have even gotten up right then and gotten a workout in right after it, but I can't remember, but it was, I mean, all those little things, right? They all add a little extra motivation.
Yeah. And I mean, because I was looking at your resume throughout the brackets and I'm like, did you ever consider going up to 133? And I don't really know if you were cutting a lot of weight or not, but when you're out with an injury, you naturally gain weight because you're not working out. So was there any thought of you ever going up to a weight class?
Every year after my freshman year. I'd like to say I was big for the weight. I don't know if it was necessarily I was big for the weight, is I was probably undisciplined in my nutrition and my weight cut, things like that. Just being a young kid, right? I see it all the time now. I mean, it was probably more of a discipline issue. I could have been big enough, but it was just better for the team that I stayed down. It really was. And again, Rob and I had that conversation. Hey, it's better for you to be down to 25. Okay, that's where I'm going then.
Yeah. And you guys, those last 2 years had some great teams. 09, when you got the job done, team was could have was ranked high all year, but then this following year, Cornell takes second as a team. So I mean, it's so much fun when you're on a winning team. Not that many of us can have experienced that, but you were one of the rare ones that got to experience the individual title, but also putting some new records up for the team. And that had to be pretty cool.
It's probably one of the things I'm most proud of in my career, and I think it's such a balance, being a competitive wrestler, especially in an individual sport, because as an athlete, my teammates probably tell you, I mean, I was super selfish as an athlete, right? It was, blinders on, it was, what is best for Troy. And, it was probably one of the qualities that allowed me to have the success that I did. But at the same time, it's tough because, it's an individual sport, but it is a team sport, right? And that senior year, I lost in the second round of the national tournament, right? I had already won my national title. My shoulder was a complete mess by that point. And I remember sitting down with Rob and, having a conversation, and, Rob gave me the option, said, hey, if you're just ready to be done, like, it's okay. Right. And I'd be lying if I said it didn't cross my mind. Right. Like it
sounds so good. Right.
Yeah. I mean, I don't care about third, fourth, fifth, like who cares? Right. It's my goal was to win it. It was first or bust. So I'd be lying if I said it didn't cross my mind. But at the end of the day, I remember, being back in the hotel and, I'm probably, I don't even know if I was starting my weight cut by then, or what was going on, but we had an excellent first or last session that first day, as a team. And, it was kind of one of those like, crap, like I got to do it now, right? I got to do this. It's not about me. I'm doing it for the team. And I was able to wrestle all the way back to that third place match, ended up finishing fourth, got a lot of pinpoints on the backside, but it was probably one of those finishes looking back on it now. And once it was over, that I am most proud of, because it was a totally unselfish move and doing something for somebody other than myself, right? Which hadn't happened up that point in my career. So, I tell guys all the time, I mean, just doing it as a group, it feels so much better. It really does.
Yeah. And it's funny you say that you were a selfish wrestler, because now as a coach, it's the ultimate selfless thing. So like back when you were a competitor and you're going through your season, you're totally hyper focused on yourself. Like, what's your daily routine like? Are you having much of a social life, or is it narrowed in and laser focused?
I mean, you're still talking back in the day, right?
Yeah, I'm talking like Cornell when you're on the hunt still.
Yeah, I mean, there was very little social life, right? I mean, and I wouldn't call myself a hermit by any means, but I mean, I didn't have the friends, I didn't have the parties, things like that going on. It was all goal oriented, right? I was completely driven just to that, and again, I think with whatever you're doing, right? If you're trying to be the best at it, you have to be different than others, and there's going to be sacrifices that have to be made. And I almost hate calling them sacrifices, right? Because they're not. They're choices. They're choices you're making because you're trying to reach a specific goal. And when you can value one thing over another, it doesn't hurt as bad because you know why you're doing it, right? So that there was a lot of choices that were made that it just was what it was.
Yeah, and I got to imagine for you that must have started, way back in 8th grade to go on the run you did. You must have been putting on some serious time. And Yanni actually says that all the time. It's not a sacrifice; it's a choice, and I love that concept. Yeah, and so once you get out of that environment, now you're in the coaching world. Was it hard for you to adopt, or adapt, I should say, once you got to Iowa State and you kind of switched roles a little bit there?
It really wasn't, because at that point in my career, I was done competing, right? So it was no longer about me. I think, again, one of the reasons I decided to pursue this career path was, again, after taking a couple of years to really sit back and reflect on my career and, what my coaches have done for me and things like that, like, I appreciated it so much more, and being able to look back on it, and not being in the moment. I mean, I can't tell you how many times, Rob Cole, Steve Garland, those guys, I've gone to them and apologized. Like, hey, man, I'm sorry. I must have been a huge pain in the ass.
Really?
Oh, I'm telling you, like, and I was, they'll agree, right? But
how so? Just
too,
because
right?
like you were like wanting to just get it in for yourself? Like, you have any examples?
Yeah, I mean, it was just that selfish nature, right? And just everything's me, But again, they don't take it personal, right? Because
Right.
that is the job, right? But I think at the same time, that's allowed me to be a better coach, because all of these different athletes are different, right? And some guys need more attention than others. And sometimes when I get that athlete, right, who he's very needy, right? It's I don't know if I want to say it's karma, right? But it's a little bit of that coming back on me, Hey, I got to get up at 2 a.m. to go cut weight with this guy because we got weigh-ins in 6 hours, right? It's like, yeah, I was on the other side of that. So I guess you reap what you sow, right?
Man, that's awesome. That is, especially to hear you say that, because you have that perspective now, and it's funny. I had as you're telling the story, I don't know why, but in my head, I'm thinking I had Tony Ramos's high school coach on about a month ago, and he was like amazing, but pain in the ass. Like, he was like any of those, elite talents, they require a lot of attention because, when you think about high school, you're not wrestling that national schedule. And you think about you in college, you had the competition in the schedule, but the injury bug kind of kicking around. So probably a lot of, exceptions and stuff like that for you to get through those seasons.
Yeah, I mean, it's 100% maybe a better coach, because I've learned that there's a lot of give and take, and every situation with every specific athlete, it's different, and you almost have to look at them different, while trying to maintain a culture amongst your team too, right? It's a very delicate balancing act, and you just got to try to find that right balance.
Yeah. And before we go on to Iowa State and the coaching, I do have to ask about two more things from your wrestling days. One is, when you were a senior, the great Kyle Dake wins his first title and you get to be around him. And I'm sure you knew him, from being in New York guys, but, as the older statesman, what was the impact on you watching Kyle Dake that freshman year kind of, run through everybody?
So Kyle, I mean, he was quite a bit younger than me, but we grew up together, right? He was part of that Shamrock program as well, right? So I mean, I remember seeing, Kyle in there, training and whatnot, and he was similar in a lot of ways, right? He was very good, but he was never the best, right? And so I've seen Kyle wrestle since he was 8 years old. But, you know, even his freshman year, I mean, you know, I remember, I mean, I was 25 pounder senior. He's a true freshman, 41 pounder. He's actually a 41 pounder at that time too, you know, getting in there and, you know, getting on top of him at least and being able to, you know, put it on him a little bit, you know, and then he goes out there and, you know, obviously he has a great season. He knocks off some really tough guys, and I've been through it. Right. And I don't know if I've ever told this story, but just going through it, right. You know, you know what it takes to win and, you know, be at that next level. And I'm like, he's very good. He's just not ready yet. Right. And sure enough, he goes out there, he freaking wins the thing. Right. And it wasn't long after that I realized, like, what made Kyle special is, I mean, his will to win, right? He's just going to find a way. And, you know, ever since, it's like, you know, I've got to say, it's like, you don't bet against Kyle Dake, right?
Yeah.
Like, he's going to find a way to do it. Like, you know, I mean, you get all the naysayers out there, whatnot. He's a guy that's just going to find a way. And, you know, sure enough, I mean, you know, I wrestled with him a little bit that next year when I was still around, you know, and it's like, man, he's pretty dang good. I can't wrestle him on my feet anymore, you know, and then he outgrows me. I'm like, I'm definitely not touching him anymore. But, you know, just again, I think when you have guys like him, you know, or wrestling for their 4th world title coming up here in, you know, another day, 24 hours. I mean, it's, there's certain things that make them special, and, you know, they're unique, but it's only a guy like Kyle Dake that's willing to do the things that he needs to do to be successful. And that's what makes him special.
And along those lines, was he someone who every day is coming in doing the right thing, or was he kind of having ups and downs from like training consistency back then?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, Kyle was 100% locked in, working his butt off, doing the right things each and every day. I mean, there wasn't ever a time where you'd question, you know, is he doing enough? Is he doing the right things? You know, very coachable, right? I mean, ask the right questions. I mean, you know, never thinks he's above anything, right? I mean, you know, Kyle, you know, I mean, be a couple-time national champ. He'll be the first guy to step in there and wash the mats for you after practice too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he's very selfless in a lot of ways. So again, it's a lot of those just unique qualities that add up together that make a guy like him so special.
Yeah. Now he's awesome. And like you said, competing tomorrow, I believe it's tomorrow. And this podcast will go live today, so it'll be current. You know, the last thing I got to ask you about, of course, is 2009 national championships. You get the W. You know, he plays first, second, third, and fourth, and not that order. But, you know, so you've seen it all. What, you know, as you think back to that tournament, where were you at mentally going into that one?
I was really, you know, laser focused. You know, it was again, like, you know, kind of that I have to win, right? I have to do it right now. And again, there was a lot going on outside of wrestling in my life that I was probably naive to, just not even aware of, right? That could have affected me, but I was so laser focused that it just didn't. You know, I was very fortunate, right, to win it when I did. And, you know, my father was very sick at the time. I didn't realize how sick he was. You know, we had some very gracious donors who, to this day, you know, I thank them from the bottom of my heart that were able to fly him out there, get him there. He was in the stands, kind of saw the benefit of all that hard work, that time that he put into me, you know, kind of, you know, reached the pinnacle, right,
Yeah.
for wrestling in the United States. So it was just a very joyous feeling, and you know, probably a little bit of relief as well for me personally. But just to have him there, it was so special.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. And I know you guys had a really cool moment afterwards. Before that match, when you're in the tunnel, knowing that you have this lifetime of work, dedication going into it, your family's in the stands, were you someone who had like a pre-match routine in terms of like self-talk visualization?
Yeah, 100%. And I remember being back in that tunnel because, you know, you do the whole parade of champions, and then, you know, back then you started at 25 no matter what. So that was the first match, but there's probably a good 15 minutes of, you know, just getting set up and TV and all these things that you're waiting on. And I was going through my usual routine, and I remember there was just not a doubt in my mind that I was going to lose that match. You know, it was one of those, it was almost a calming feeling. I wasn't nervous. I mean, I had already been in the finals before. it was very calm, to be honest, but there just wasn't a doubt, a hesitation in my mind that I was going to go win that match. And I wrestled a terrible match, but I mean, I found a way to win, right? And I mean, that's what it takes sometimes, but you know, things don't always go perfect, but luckily I found a way.
I mean, but those brackets you were in, I was looking back at, I mean, there's so many good guys, and you guys have probably all wrestled so many times. Those matches were all very, you know, a lot of times very close. Like, you know, freshman year, you had Coleman Scott in there. I don't even think, you know, he was in, maybe he got like 5th or 6th. It's like, I mean, those were loaded weights at that 125 mark.
Yeah, they were pretty tough. My one assistant coach was showing me not too long ago, they were coming out with, you know, the top 10 brackets in the last, well, I guess probably more than 10 years now, top 20 brackets the last 20 years or whatever. And I think a couple of my brackets were up there as like 1 and 2, right? You know,
Oh,
it was
yeah.
pretty interesting to see that. But yeah, it's one of those things you don't think about it at the time, right? But looking back on it, yeah, they're pretty tough.
I mean, yeah, Joe Dubuque, Sam Hayeswinkle, you had Angel Escobedo. I mean, these are like legit hammers. I don't know if you ever wrestled Coleman Scott, but he was in a couple of those. But I mean, just legendary
Coleman,
battles.
Nick Simmons,
Nick
Chad
Simmons,
Mendez.
the
I
Strangler.
mean, so many guys. Absolutely.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. So I love that you were out of Iowa State, because KJ is one of the coolest cats you'll ever talk to. And everyone you interview is like, man, KJ just gets you excited. He gets you fired up. And you had been in the Ivy League for so long. What were some of your first impressions about Iowa State and wrestling or coaching with KJ?
You know, it really intrigued me a lot. You know, I like I said, I was done with my competitive career at that point, and you know, I knew I wanted to coach, and I had opportunities to stay at Cornell, right? But in a lot of ways, I felt like I already knew the system, right? I knew, you know, how Rob ran his program, and for me, it was really important to get out and see something else. And I had a couple other opportunities, really good opportunities, you know, some, you know, similar to Cornell, that, you know, they're probably seeking me out more than the Iowa State job. But, you know, when the Iowa State job came available, I mean, it was one of those that I really reached out to KJ immediately and said, hey, you know, would you consider me? Because it was kind of that polar opposite from a program like Cornell. I mean, you know, it's Iowa State. They've got the history. It's a big time Power 5 program, right? I was really intrigued to see how, you know, those Power 5 programs operated. And, you know, getting out there, I mean, it was such a great experience for me. I learned so much in the 2.5 years I was there. Being around a guy like KJ, I mean, he is one of, if not the best technician I've ever been around in my life. You know, he is fantastic in the room.
Really?
You know, it was just such a great experience, and it really, you know, between my experience, you know, with Rob and knowing his side of the business, and then, you know, the training high level athletes with KJ, it was just that thing that, you know, projected me on that fast track to being a head coach so quickly, because I felt like I was really prepared at that point.
And when you took the job at Iowa State, like if you fast or rewind 6 months before that, were you still thinking about dental school, or had you decided on becoming like the head coach trajectory?
It was right about that time when I had changed. Yeah, I mean, when I was at Iowa State, it was all in coaching, right? You know, it was months before that, right after I really got done competing, that, you know, I spent a year at the Finger Lakes Wrestling Club in Ithaca, where I wasn't competing anymore. I was, you know, still studying for my dental exam. I was coaching the club, and you know, during that time I found myself studying less and coaching more, right? And I realized, you know, hey, this is where my passion is. This is really what I want to do. So I just took the ball and ran with it.
I love it. What was if anything, was there any big differences between like the Power 5 programs and Cornell, or was it more hype than reality?
No, I think there's a ton of differences. You know, it's you know, Cornell, it's you're doing at a Cornell, at a Northern Colorado, right? You're doing a lot of things that people don't see, a lot of that behind the scenes stuff, right? You're doing the fundraising, you're doing the alumni engagement, you know, you're filling out paperwork, you know, just all of the little stuff, right, that you don't think about. At Iowa State, I was able to just coach, right? I coached and I recruited. That was it, you know. Paperwork, you got somebody for that. You know, fundraising, don't worry about it. We got plenty of money. It was just crazy, right? You could actually focus on coaching, and there's a lot of positives to that. And it really just helped me as a coach developing relationships with athletes. And you've seen two of my kids that I coached. Kids are grown men now, but guys that I've coached at Iowa State that have assisted with me. You develop those relationships that are lifelong relationships, and it's very impactful.
Yeah, I mean, it's just cool to see, like, on your resume, you look at a Cornell grad, all that experience, the wrestling accolades off the charts, and then you get to Iowa State, like you said, a power, and you're working under the former Olympic coach, from 2000 to, I don't remember exactly when he got there, but I mean, so you see it all. And when you get to Northern Colorado, the first 2 months in, are you having like that oh shit moment, or are you like really getting in there and loving it? Because I've heard both sides of it from all the folks we've had on the podcast.
Yeah, I never really had that moment. I had a pretty good idea of what I was getting into. I knew it was going to take time, and it was all about just getting better every day, and I think it was, there was just so much to do. I really needed to find a way to prioritize getting the things that really mattered done. Right. And I mean, again, you're talking, I just arrived there. I've got 5.5 scholarships. I've got, a team that has a ton of academic and APR issues. Right.
How many coaches?
I have one assistant coach. I mean, it was a mess. Right. I mean, so it was really kind of, I say in a lot of ways, it would have been easier to start a brand new program, right? Because we had to change the culture and everything about the program before we were able to actually grow and build. So it was, I learned a lot in those first few years, right? And I certainly made mistakes. I still make mistakes on a daily basis, but it made me a better coach because of it. And again, I've got my, vision plans, 1 year, 5 year, 10 year, right? And, it's fun to go back and look at those and, say, man, we accomplished that a heck of a lot quicker than I thought we would. And, looking at those other goals and saying, man, I was clueless. Like, I didn't realize how hard this was. But no, it's been fun. And, I keep a picture here in my office every day of the first team that I had here, right? And it's just our team photo, but it's a good reminder to me in those days where maybe I'm struggling or whatnot mentally, just, maybe we didn't have a great practice. We're not getting what I feel like we need to get done, right? Going back and looking at that and saying, man, like, we've come a long way, right? We're continuing to grow. And again, that's not a knock on any of those guys that were here, right? I've got great relationships with those guys, but they understand that was the first group that was really here to change that culture and get this program back to success.
Yeah. I mean, what you've learned from that first year now must be, you look back and just be like, it's insane how much, and you knew a lot of wrestling coming in, but like, you being a head coach and really running the show, you were the youngest head coach in D1 at the time. It's pretty remarkable. What's like the one thing that you wish you knew on D1, or is there anything obvious that sticks out to you there?
If I had it to do over, it was probably not worrying about the things that don't really matter, right? And focusing on the things that are going to really make a difference. Again, if our SID had spelled somebody's name wrong, or a roster was wrong or whatever on the website, not letting that stuff get to you, right? It's not going to move the needle really in the grand scheme of things. I mean, I'm a lot of ways type A personality, probably a little bit of OCD, right? I mean, I'm a perfectionist in a lot of ways. So that stuff used to bug me a lot, right? When it wasn't perfect, but it doesn't really matter, right? There's other things that are going to matter more. I could be out, instead of worrying about that, recruiting the next guy that's going to help impact this program, or I can be out talking to that big donor who's going to really impact the program. There's other things that matter than all those little minute details.
Yeah, no, it's I mean, you can only be as good as you were through being kind of a type A personality like that. Well, it's been awesome to chat and kind of go through your career and just understand where you guys are going now. I know you have a lot of freshmen coming in this year, and how do you pronounce Andrew's last name? Aliras, yeah.
Aliras, yes.
He's awesome. I mean, he was so close to getting on the podium last year. So does he have 2 years left or 1 year left?
He's got 2 years and a red shirt. Yeah. So
Wow.
we'll see, kind of what happens. I mean, obviously he's ready to go this year. He had a fantastic summer. Again, I've said it a couple of times so far this year. He's going to be on the podium. It's just a matter of how high. He had a great summer. He really focused on the folk style side of things, and he's taken some time to reflect. And I mean, he's always had a lot of God-given natural abilities. But I tell you what, I mean, he has transformed so much in the past 3 years. He is by far the hardest worker in our room. He does more than anybody else. I mean, he does those extra things that it takes to be successful. And texting with him just before this, he actually hasn't been at practice the last 2 days because he just had his wisdom teeth out. But we texting with him, hey, did you watch Zane? Yeah, I watched him. Like, I'm not surprised. It's like, yeah, he's smashing these dudes. It's like, okay, well, you wrestled with Zane this summer, right? You were down in national team camp. What do you think? It's like, there's no reason I can't smash these dudes, right? And he's not wrong. I mean, he's super talented, and I think being able to wrestle with a lot of those guys this summer. I mean, he wrestled with Zane, he wrestled with Burroughs, he wrestled with Yanni, up and down those lineups. I mean, it really kind of opened his eyes a little bit to that aha, where hey, it's my time. I got to figure this out.
And I got to think that's a huge advantage for you guys to pitch that, hey, we're close to the OTC. Like, you can get there. I don't know how close it is, but you're within the same state. I mean, is that something you guys do, is get your guys over to those camps if possible?
We try to as much as we can. Yeah. We've been very fortunate. I mean, even when, obviously when school's out of session, it's easy, right? But I mean, it's only a 2-hour drive, less than a 2-hour drive. So, sometimes even when school's in session, I mean, our academic coordinators have been able to work with professors and whatnot. Hey, there's a camp going on this week. They need training partners. Go, right? Go train with them. So it's been very, very helpful with our program, just our guys being able to put their hands on those best guys, seeing how they live, right? I think has been very important. Obviously you can see how they'll train, but seeing how they live, the things they do outside the room are just as important as the things they do inside the room. And it's helped our guys a ton.
Did you ever live out there?
For a quick stint, about 6 months. But
6 months. Wow. When was that? 08 or 12?
That was getting ready for 12. Yeah, I was there probably at the end of 10, early 11.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't realize you were out there. Oh, who was the hook that got you out there during that time?
Brandon Slay was the developmental coach at that time. So it was one of those things. It was kind of that last ditch effort to really see if I could do reach my goals on that international scene. Unfortunately, I wasn't healthy enough, right? I came to that conclusion pretty quickly and jumped out. But it was a good experience for me, though.
Yeah, I mean, just to have that experience is certainly valuable. And Coach, we'll sign off here, but usually we ask people, how did wrestling change their life? It's like wrestling is so much ingrained in your life. I feel like a better question is, if someone wants to come out and support the program, do you guys have any big home duels you drive people to, or like what's the best way to get involved and come see the program?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just showing up, right? Just being involved. I mean, our home dual attendance is growing tremendously right now. We've really, established ourselves as one of the programs on campus that people want to go see, right? So I can't remember who our big home duels are this year. I want to say it's going to be South Dakota State and Cal Poly.
Okay.
Those are both be in January. I mean, just keep following us, right? I mean, I think we're on the brink. We've been getting better every year, and I think we're really close to punching through and just taking that next giant leap.
It's awesome to see because, you and UNC went D1, I think like 05, 06, somewhere in there. And so like, it's important to get more D1 programs. I mean, we're definitely seeing some growth at the D3 level, but the fact that you're leading the charge there is just so awesome. And it's been an honor to have you on the podcast, and just want to thank you very much for your time, Coach.
Well, I appreciate it, Ryan.
Thank you. Take care.